All right, a little different format today. We will be doing our call-in segment, our open hour, in two blocks from 11:30 to 12 and then 12:30 to 1. And the reason why is because we have the Premier of the province, Tim Houston, in studio here from 10:30 to 11:30, taking your calls, answering your questions. Does that make sense? I think it does, right? You'll still have the full hour of just a regular open hour, just broken up between 11:30 and 12, and then 12:30 to 1. Again, Tim Houston, the Premier of the province, will join the show from 10:30 to 11:30. And, of course, we will be talking about tariffs, but whatever other questions you have for the Premier. And, of course, during the open hour, you can get into whatever you like. But some of the questions that I am asking you to address is patriotism is spreading across the country, including Alberta Premier Daniel Smith and Quebec Premier François Legault, which is quite rare. But do we as a collective have the resolve to sustain this patriotism over the long haul, potentially even years in this tariff war with the United States? Can we count on Canadian businesses to resist pulling up stakes and heading to the United States? And should we expect them to do just that? Because, look, business owners in many cases can be fluid, right? They can move their business south of the border. And if they cannot make money here because of the economic situation with tariffs, etc., then the motivation would be there, or the incentivization would be there to go south of the border, and that's part of Donald Trump's scheme, right? That's part of his tactic, is to lure Canadian businesses, small and big, to south of the border. And if they do that, then with them goes jobs and economic activity and all that, and that's not good for Canada. Can we count on Canadian, or rather, is it clear that at this point that Trump, his administration, Republicans, and supporters are adversaries, even enemies of Canada? Would you use that type of language? I think that it's pretty evident that that's so. You listen to his press secretary yesterday quipping about us being the 51st state and laughing about it. It's pretty evident right now that's the case. Is it also evident that the president has far too much power with these executive orders? Is this a blind spot the founding fathers did not anticipate when writing the American Constitution? Which is a bit ironic considering they emerged from totalitarianism and the British, which were at the time, of course, abusing their power over the states, and that's what led to the American Revolution. Will the American people eventually wake up and rein in this unhinged despot? And I think despot is an accurate way to describe Donald Trump at this point. And must we avoid the trap of pitting regions and industries against each other? And on it goes with questions that I have for you to address this. But again, you can talk about whatever you like, obviously, during the open hour, but I'm sure that many of you want to get into this. Thanks so much for tuning in and listening, folks. We appreciate it very much. I'd like to thank Vanessa Vandeness, as well as always on the other side of the glass, doing a fine job as always. All right, let's jump in and talk to Dan Kelly, Canadian Federation of Independent Business President and CEO. Dan, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
All right, so troubled times, no doubt. You must be hearing all types of concerns from your members. What are you hearing from people?
Gosh, this is a incredibly poorly timed series of events, and it will have a huge effect on small and medium-sized companies. I think that when we think about Canada-U.S. trade, we think about the auto industry, we think about perhaps some seafood products, agricultural products, and oil and gas. And, of course, many of those have strong connections, or if they're not run by small and medium-sized companies. But what gets forgotten in this is that this affects, of course, all the imports of U.S. products into Canada, and that has a huge number of, an even larger number of small firms affected. There's about 16% of small firms that export to the U.S., but almost half import directly from the United States. So Canada's retaliatory tariffs are really going to be the part that hurts even harder than the export-oriented tariffs, and of course, both affect us all.
So are the retaliatory tariffs not a good idea in your opinion?
We have to be careful about their use, but I will say just in the last couple of months, from the first threats of this to, a new survey that we did just a week or so ago, small businesses understand that governments need to respond, and they need to respond strongly. In fact, almost 3/4 of small firms support Canada taking retaliatory action, even knowing that this is going to negatively affect them. Look, Canada's tariffs, our retaliatory tariffs, are basically like us taking economic chemotherapy. It's poison that we take ourselves in order to fight a larger battle. The bigger question, though, of course, is it going to work? Is Trump going to really care if some U.S. companies are negatively affected because they're not able to trade into Canada? We do know that he will care if U.S. citizens are affected by the tariffs that he imposes through higher prices for oil or food or things like that. But it looks like we're in for a trade war of one shape. Even if they climb down, it doesn't look like the threat, as you were saying, is going to go away anytime soon. So we're in at least for 4 years of uncertainty.
Okay, how tempting would it be for many businesses to pull up stakes and head to the south? I know not everybody can do that for a variety of reasons, but there are some businesses that could very easily, not very easily, but could move south of the border. Any concerns there?
Yeah, no, we should all be concerned about it, and it's not because we have unpatriotic businesses. It's just, I talked to a business owner who sells 90% of his products into the U.S. market. So sure, he can try to pivot and sell more to Canadians, try to sell more around the world. But in the short term, his business may not be there if he's losing his largest clients that represent 90% of his business. So you can understand why he might say, gosh, I guess I got to be on the other side of this tariff wall and set up a shop in the U.S. And it doesn't necessarily just mean relocations of businesses. It often means that, you might have, and many do, have a branch location in the U.S., but that's where the expansion happens in order to attract those customers. So there's that. Of course, there's all the other things that we have to take in mind beyond the tariffs. There's the fact that Trump is going to be cutting a bunch of taxes, including for small businesses. He's cutting a ton of regulations. So just on the competitiveness alone, we have to be concerned about that. And that's, of course, shameful that our governments have not attended to those until very, very recently. But tides are turning. And there are some opportunities that this creates as well. We do have other trade agreements with other countries, and hopefully we can catalyze those and get some business going, both new imports into Canada from other countries other than the U.S. and new export markets.
Yeah, what is the concern about pitting region against region and even beyond that, industry against industry? Because as the president starts to carve out certain industry exemptions like auto and seafood and whatever he decides or they decide, then that could eventually create volatility, I would think, industry versus industry, because other industries would say, what about us? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, that absolutely could happen, but that's beyond our control. We have to watch what is within our own control. So if Trump exempts potash or exempts, as he did yesterday, temporarily exempts the auto industry, they get a bit of a reprieve. But everybody knows in those industries still that we're one fleeting thought from another tariff on those commodities because he's changed his mind again. And this is the crazy part of this, is that, it's not like this is sensible on any, and we haven't even got really what the end game is. Like, what is the true objective of these tariffs? It seems like tariffs are being put in place for the sake of tariffs to either raise some money and or to create chaos in other countries such that then companies say, you know what, regardless of whether the tariffs happen or not, I just can't take the risk. I got to relocate or expand into the United States. And those seem to be some of the objectives of this. The thing, though, that's on our side that I don't think gets factored in is that for a lot of companies, you got to think, if you're looking at the U.S. market, is it a reliable market when you have a president that's changing, ideas on major issues that affect economic policy and trade every 5 seconds? And that's what we're seeing. So uncertainty is the enemy of business. Trump is also creating some uncertainty for U.S. companies, too. And that's not going to be to the long-term advantage of the United States.
All right. The issue of taxation comes up regularly here in Nova Scotia, the highest tax jurisdiction certainly in the country. And look, it's again, patriotism is a great thing, but the bottom line is the bottom line, and companies need to make money. So what are your thoughts on perhaps this being an opportunity to really kind of take a big look at taxation and businesses?
Well, look, one of the few good things that comes out of moments like this, moments of great crisis and concern, is that it does change policy directions fairly rapidly. And we're seeing that on internal trade. I am, just super, super excited about what the Nova Scotia Premier has proposed on internal trade. I really do believe that this can be quite groundbreaking if we catalyze this and get other provinces to do the same. So that's really good news. We're also seeing governments put on hold some of the tax hikes that were planned, and we see that in the federal Liberal leadership with capital gains and carbon taxes being rethought in real time. So, look, the tides are turning, and that is good news. It's a shame that we had to wait for an event like this to try to get our economic house in order, but I'll take it. If this is now causing Canadian governments to realize we can't just keep adding tax after tax, raising rates every year like we are with, we still have on the books, sadly, an April 1st carbon tax increase, an April 1st liquor tax increase. Those need to go. But there's at least a decent chance of that now with political changes that are in place. So, yeah, look, we could come out of this stronger. Any great crisis causes people to make some big changes. We've been dancing around stuff in Canada for decades. And if coming out of this, we have better internal trade, stronger tax policy, and we cut a few rules and regulations that no longer make sense, and we can get the U.S. government to back down, well, perhaps we come out in a stronger way than we're going into it.
Right, but we can't drag our heels on this. We need to do it. We need to have a sense of urgency, and then that's the concern, right? That that a lot of this stuff gets talked about, but nothing happens. Action does not happen.
You're 100% right, and we've seen that movie, sadly, you and I 1,000 times before, and there's a good chance of that happening. But I do sense a sense of urgency right now, especially on the internal trade side. We're starting to see meetings happen, decisions making. Internal trade used to be, I'll give you a good example. What are the internal trade barriers? Oh, look, we have to have every province require different items in a safety kit, a first aid kit in their for a business to have. Every single province had a different version of it with different numbers of Band-Aids and that kind of stuff. So when we raised this with the government, what did they do? They put together a panel of bureaucrats, spent 6 months trying to figure out how many Band-Aids should be in a safety kit across the country so we could harmonize this. And we move forward on that one set of rules. Meanwhile, there are 400,000 rules and regulations on average by each provincial government. 400,000. So if we tried to do this one by one, we'd get nowhere. And what I like about the Premier's approach is that he's talking about saying, hey, if it's good enough in Saskatchewan, it's good enough in Nova Scotia, as long as we mutually agree. That's the way to get this done.
Any particular industry, small business that you think is the most vulnerable here?
Well, sure. Look, exporters of manufactured goods will be, are unlikely to see any kind of relief from this, given the initial indications from the U.S. So they will be directly affected. But here's my point that I was making earlier. I spoke this week to a group of car wash owners from across Canada at their annual meeting in Toronto. You wouldn't think a car wash would be trade exposed, but here's what they told me. 95% of the products, like the hard things like the machinery, equipment, brushes, 95% of it comes from the United States, all the technology behind the car wash. And most of the chemicals come from the U.S. as well. So one guy said that 95% of the things he buys come from the United States. So if we slap on a 25% tariff on all of those things, think about that. That's a car wash. You wouldn't expect that to have a major impact from a trade dispute, but in fact it will. Well,
very interesting. Dan, listen, I appreciate your time. We'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Anytime.
All right, take care. Dan Kelly, Canadian Federation of Independent Business President and CEO. Nova Scotia rapidly losing some of its most affordable apartments while cost soars for new ones. That when we come back. All right, before I chat with Jeff Karabanow about our next topic, we're going to give away 2 sets of Mooseheads tickets. The Mooseheads are hosting Sherbrooke on Saturday at 7 o'clock. If you'd like to get a pair of tickets, give us a call at 902-405-6000. We'll take callers 6 and 7. Again, 902-405-6000 gets a pair of these Mooseheads tickets. They're hosting Sherbrooke Saturday at 7 o'clock, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. All right, joining us now for a chat is Jeff Karabanow, professor at Dalhousie University and co-director of Dal's Social Work Community Clinic. Jeff, thanks for joining the show.
My pleasure. Thanks, Todd.
All right, it'd be nice if we could talk about something good for a change, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's good. It's good that we're talking about this stuff.
No.
So I always thank you for the invitation, because I think we need to be talking about dynamics around housing and homelessness.
Absolutely. I saw the story on the CBC website. The headline, Nova Scotia rapidly losing some of its most affordable apartments while costs soar for new ones. The median rent for Halifax's oldest apartments up over 40% since 2020. That is just not sustainable. I think that you don't need to be economist to figure that out, right?
Absolutely. We're really losing stock, and the stock that we have, it's just becoming more and more unreachable.
Okay, so what's going on here? What's at the heart of the issue here?
So I think there's a few things. One, the larger contextual piece is that we just haven't invested in the past 30 plus years in any type of affordable housing, social community housing. So that's a real big piece. We're writing actually a chapter. One of the authors in that CBC article is a co-author of this chapter with me, where we're kind of looking at kind of notions around affordability within the province since the 60s. And I think up to the 1990s, Canada was investing as much as it was investing in other social safety nets. It was investing, every province, in some form of affordable social housing. And that really changed with just the divestment in terms of federal transfer funds to provinces. And our province in Nova Scotia, like many other provinces, really didn't pick that up. So there was a real kind of lack of any engagement in affordable housing. At that time, there's a perception that we really didn't need that. There's a lot more focus on home ownership. And unfortunately, we kind of left a lot of the stock that existed kind of in disrepair. And now we're really feeling that. So that's one dynamic, is just disinvestment. Another is that we've left way too much of our housing mechanisms in the private sector. And I know you've heard me say this over and over, but we do need, if we perceive that housing, and our national housing strategy is using this language now, that there needs to have a human kind of right piece to housing, then it has to stay away from the private sector, and it needs its own investment pieces kind of engaged with the private and the nonprofit sectors to allow some stock to sit outside so it can maintain an affordability element. And that we just haven't done. And what we're seeing now is, yes, there's been more investment, but we're playing catch up, and we're playing catch up in very, very volatile times, right? We've had a pandemic for a few years, and now we have tariff dynamics, we have high inflation. So all these things are creating perfect storms.
All right, building new housing stock, that in and of itself, that can't get it done, or can it? Or what are your thoughts on just straight up saying inventory is the solution, or a big part of the solution here?
So yes, I mean, we definitely need supply. Absolutely. That supply has to be mandated to be affordable, and it has to have clear kind of definitions of what affordability means, so that we're actually tapping into a huge population with kind of lower income that can finally actually have a chance to get into kind of any type of housing piece. So yes, supply is significant, but also we need a lot of investment in existing stock, and we also need to kind of have a whole different kind of arena that is looking at ways in which we can start to rebuild our kind of social housing applications, like co-ops, like land trusts, having nonprofits that historically always kind of maintain a particular rent geared to income kind of platform. So yes, these are all elements that we need to be kind of pushing at the same time. And we're also in very strange times economically and politically, that this has to be really pushed day in and day out so that we don't ignore it.
All right, tying in with all of this, I saw this story on the CTV website. It says, while a fire at a city-designated encampment beneath the McDonald Bridge in Halifax may ignite concerns about encampment, city councillors and the mayor say they are here to stay. A quote from Patty Cuddle says, it's a response to a situation where we're having a housing affordability crisis as well as a mental health and addictions health crisis. The Cuddles district, there aren't any designated encampments, which she says smaller clusters of tents are in their area exist, and they pose safety risks. So it's pretty unrealistic to think that encampments are going away anytime soon. Look, if you have people who are homeless and there are no options, what the hell else are you going to do? I mean, it comes down to that, doesn't it? It's pretty simple.
Absolutely. Again, the dynamic is from the province has been, create another kind of emergency crisis shelter and allow folks to get in there. That works for a small percentage of the population that's situated in encampments. For others, we need much more sustainable and more thoughtful kind of wraparound support mechanisms. Pallet housing could be one of those responses. We need a lot more than that. I know there's a lot of complexity to where you put those. But yeah, the encampment piece is not going to go away because, as we've noted earlier, right, it's all connected to affordable housing, and we just have such low investment in that stock at this moment.
And ironically,
another piece.
Sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
Look at other cities, like, for example, Montreal, that has the municipality has kind of what's called a first right to refusal on any purchases of units. We should be doing that as well. We should, rather than put, what we're doing is we're selling off a lot of our units to, developers, big corporations, and we're really losing not only the kind of fabric of the locality in Nova Scotia, but we're also losing stuff that can be really affordable and can also kind of, be able to provide through nonprofit work just a deeper affordability to dynamics around housing. We have to start to really remember that housing has to be seen as kind of a human right.
Yeah, and I was going to say it's a bit ironic that encampments they put this issue front and center, and because it's so visual, right? And that's a sad thing that we've got encampments, but I suppose it forces us to deal with it in some way.
Well, so I remember a bunch of us started out of the cold emergency winter shelter about 15 years ago. And I remember at that time, I was pretty new to this province, and I just come back from working in Montreal and in Guatemala around homelessness. And when I came here and there wasn't that visibility, for the public, we were noticing rising levels of folks that just could not get into any type of affordability. And that was like in the early 2000s. And I remember, if we look at now the history, that was really the beginning where we started to see how a lack of investment in the past has really, really impacted this province, and especially the big cities. At that point, we weren't having as much kind of, migration from rural communities into cities or migration from other provinces. But it was still, we were starting to feel it. And I remember thinking, we're going to start to see what we're seeing in other cities. We're going to start to see more and more people living rough. And, now, unfortunately, this is where we're at.
Jeff, always a good chat. I appreciate your time. Thanks so much. And perhaps we'll have some good news at some point. But like you said, it's important we have these conversations.
Absolutely. And thanks always for the invite.
Okay, take care. Jeff Karabanow of Dalhousie University, the Premier, from 10:30 to 11:30, taking your calls when we come back. All right. We have an opportunity to chat with the Premier of the province, Tim Houston, who's in studio here. And not only I will chat with Tim Houston, you have the opportunity to talk to the Premier as well. If you'd like to ask the Premier a question, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. We've got the Premier for an hour till 11:30. Mr. Premier, thanks for coming in.
Happy to be here. I enjoy this.
Yeah, that's right. And you wore a nice suit and everything. Is that to impress us?
You got to look good for radio.
Face for radio? That's
Face
the old
for
line,
radio,
right?
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Look, right off the top, let's before I take calls, you had some pretty bold comments about the President of the United States, if we call him that, even at this point, Donald Trump or whatever derogatory term. Just kind of reiterate that, or just let people know how you feel, because you're obviously very passionate about this.
Yeah, it's a crazy world right now. Like emotions are so high, everything is so politically charged, and honestly, we have the President of the United States declaring economic war on Canada. Mm-hmm. He is intent on harming our country and harming our people, and that's not okay. And he may think Canada's weak, but Canada is not weak. Canada is very, very strong, and as my friend Doug Ford would say, and it ain't for sale either. Yeah. But it's really hard to get the head around why he would attack his best friend and neighbor and greatest ally.
Yeah, I guess at some point you stop analyzing and you just start reacting to it. That's where we're at, right? Because analyzing a guy who's erratic is almost a fool's errand.
Well, definitely. I mean, we I think as a country we've done a good job. People say, what does he want? What's he trying to achieve? And
exactly.
Who knows, right?
Yeah.
But we've taken him at his word. So he said he wants the border protected. Well, we're good with that. Yeah. So we've stepped up as a country on that. He wants to attack fentanyl. Well, nobody wants fentanyl in their community, so we put a big focus on that too. He probably made us spring into action on both of those things, and that's good for Canadians. He wants us to meet our NATO commitments and defense spending. Well, those are good. But so we've made strides towards all of those things, and now when the rubber hit the road, he said, "Well, it's not enough." Well, that's just not true, because that's not what he was really getting at. So we have taken him at his word. We've tried that approach, and now he put the tariffs in place. Tariffs are bad for Americans too, and American business leaders are starting to speak up. They were a little afraid to speak up, but they're starting to. We need American elected officials who, I've been down to Washington a couple of times. They can't make sense of it, but they haven't been willing to say anything. So at some point, the political pressure will catch up to him, but we can't. We have to respond urgently, and I think we have here in Nova Scotia. We've taken immediate steps. I think lots of other provinces has followed suit, but taking the American booze off the shelves that gets their attention down there. I hear about that a lot, but it's not just symbolic. It's a real tangible step. So we'll continue to take those steps, but we need to get the tariffs removed, and the uncertainty that they're creating is really dangerous.
All right, just quickly, and then the phone lines are already jammed, so I want to get to callers. But counter tariffs, some economists suggest that is a dumb idea, saying that if tariffs are a dumb idea fundamentally, then a counter tariff is a dumb idea. What's your response to that?
Yeah, so they are. I'm a free trader. I believe in free trade. I especially believe in free trade across our country. But when somebody declares war on you, you have to punch back, and that punching back has to be strong enough to get the attention of the person. And this is one person. This is not the American people turning on Canada. This is not even really most of the elected people. It's the president who has this in his mind. So we've punched back. I think his move on the auto kind of somebody showed him like this is dangerous, and some of these other punchbacks that we're making, like go back to the booze. A lot of that booze comes from southern states, which are Republican voters. So we need those CEOs and those employees in his ear saying, "What are you doing?" So that's the idea. But I'm a free trader. I don't like tariffs, but when somebody punches you gotta pay attention.
All right. What else do you have in the arsenal? We got $200 million in set aside, but what else do you have for in the toolbox?
Yeah. So the tariffs, will be national. The federal government has made that. I support that. I'm on Team Canada. But then, like the non-tariffs, we got the doubling of the toll at the Cobequid Pass on U.S. commercial plated vehicles. Also, just a constant reminder to the American driving that truck that this is not okay. So it's I would call that maybe in the mosquito category, but a constant reminder that we're not happy about this. We'll look at other things. I mean, certainly, I know I was talking to the team yesterday about the EV rebates and making sure that Tesla is not part of that process. So we're listening carefully to Nova Scotians, and I'm getting a lot of good ideas. But but in terms of actually supporting Nova Scotians, $200 million in the budget for if people are impacted, businesses. People lose their jobs, whatever the case. There'll be some, we can deploy that, and if it's not enough, we'll do more. But that should be a message to Nova Scotians that we're ready to support them.
All right. So that I think you heard yesterday something about helping or for augmenting the EI system potentially? That's a plan, is it?
Yeah, so the federal government is looking at programs, similar to COVID times, different but the same, just considering what's possible. So they're looking at, the EI system. If we need to juice up the supports a little bit through there, we'll do that. But we're analyzing a number of things, but we really want to see where the impact is and address the impact. So we don't want to come out and say, here's the whole suite, because the impact might be different. If there's more exemptions for different industries, then, maybe we don't need to worry about them as much. But other industries, maybe we do. So we need to be nimble.
Okay, let's go to the phones. Caroline, hello.
Good morning, Todd. Good morning, Premier.
Good morning.
Hi, Caroline.
Hi. Thanks so much for taking my call. And Premier, it's great you're appearing here. I really appreciate that. Well, I suppose you're quite aware of the protest rally that took place in front of the legislature yesterday. And I was one of the people there, and a lot of people are not happy. I think the vibe I got was from the omnibus of bills you're attempting to pass. Now, I particularly take issue with Bill 6, in which you want to revoke the moratorium on fracking without any consultation from the public, in particular the Mi'kmaq, and also revoking the ban on uranium exploration, again, without any consultation from the public or the Mi'kmaq. So this and a lot of your other bills seem to be not really following a democratic process. So I just want to know what you have to say about that, Premier.
Yeah, thanks for calling in, Caroline, for sure. Oh. Look, I think there's a couple of things I would say. If you go back and look over the last, 5, 6, 7 years, you would see tons of commentary from, the NDP or whoever about the legislature's broken, the legislature doesn't work, it's not effective. So, we brought in a suite of changes to make it more effective. And then they, when we do that, they say, well, what do you do? And the legislature is just fine. So there's a bit of that happening in the world right now, and that's okay. But look, I understand the concerns about the natural resource development. And I guess here's what I'd say specifically on that. I'm a Nova Scotian. I don't want to harm our water, our air, our community. Like, I care about these things too. So we have to be thoughtful about this. But we have these bans in place, and what the bans mean is no discussion. And I think it's time to have the discussion. So we're going to lift the bans and we're going to have the discussion. On a project-by-project basis, there will be extensive consultation. There is a very detailed environmental assessment process. There's consultation process. I'm actually meeting with the Assembly of First Nation chiefs tomorrow. I talked to a number of the chiefs on a quite regular basis about these things. But a simple ban of something is very lazy public policy. Right now, we have to have the discussion. I used a statistic that says if you look across North America, 50 states, 10 provinces, not counting the North right now, but 50 and 10, that's 60. And if you look at the GDP per capita, that's the economic measurement per person, across those 60 things, number one would be New York State, and Massachusetts would be up there. And you start looking down the list, and maybe around 8th or 9th, you'd see Alberta. And you keep looking down the list, and then you'd start to see Mississippi, Alabama. You keep looking down the list, and all the way at the bottom, 60, Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia is the worst in North America on per capita GDP, and I'm not okay with that. And under our feet, we have enough natural gas to meet our own needs for 200 years. And today, all of our natural gas comes from the United States, every drop of it. And in the situation we're in right now, like if this trade war escalates and they flick that switch, we have no natural gas. And we're okay. I mean, the lights will stay on. We'll just burn more coal. I don't think we want that. So why would we be beholden to the United States to the extent that we won't even have a discussion? Let's have a discussion. The technology has changed on natural gas exploration and extraction so much over the last 20 years. They can do it safely in every other province. And we just have to have the courage to have the discussion, and we will have the discussion, and it is time and it is necessary. So I hope you understand, but I don't buy the narrative that there's no consultation or this is, tomorrow we're going to wake up and everything's going to be fracked and mined. That's just not true. On a project-by-project basis, there's a very detailed process, and we'll, of course, follow that process because we care. We're Nova Scotians.
Okay, Premier, I think that the whole confusion resulted from the fact that it was kind of dumped on us without consultation. So to hear that there will be some is a very good thing. And yeah, I mean, we all live here. We all want clean water. As you said, even you do. So as long as
even me,
even you,
even me, the monster,
even the Premier drinks water.
Drink water, I assume.
But no, Caroline, listen, I understand it's okay. Look, my dad always had an expression: if you're not nervous, you're not ready. It's okay to be nervous. That just makes us focus a little more. So I'm nervous too. I'm nervous about these things because I care. But there'll be extensive consultation, and we're just saying. The days of not even being willing to have this discussion, those days are over. We're going to have the discussion, and it'll be an important discussion, and I'll participate, and I know you will, and we'll get to the right spot.
Okay, Carolyn, thank you. Hopefully that helped out. Thank you. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with the Premier when we come back. All right, so we have the Premier of the province here in studio, Tim Houston, 902-405-6000, taking your calls. Hello, Dawn.
Hi, Todd. Hi, Premier. How are you today?
Hi, Don. Just great. Thanks for calling in this morning.
Good. I've got a question regarding the letter you wrote to the Minister of Public Safety. I think it was regarding the request for the immediate anti-dumping of tires imported from China, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Okay. I've been in this industry all my life. I started when I was 19, and I'm 60-something now. But I think some of the things you may not realize that importing these tires, and I know you want to protect Michelin as a neighbor, and Michelin is a great product. I sell that product too. But Michelin also has a Chinese factory that they built in 2013 for $1.5 billion in China. Bridgestone has actually China has two. Michelin has two. Bridgestone, Goodyear, Continental, Pirelli, they're all in China. Okay, so importing the tires, it's only going to go up because what's happening in North America is that, as we sell a tire in our shop, and we did one yesterday, and it was a Michelin tire, and I checked the VIN number. I asked one of the guys to give me the VIN number, the DOT number on the tire. The first three letters tells where it's made. And when I checked it out, it was 1B7.
All right, in the interest of time, please get to your question.
So
Don.
I think, are you just flagging for me, Don, to be careful? Is that the message?
No, that tire was made in Alabama. Okay, so that means that the next ones we take in are going to be 25% more because they're made in North America. But what I suggest, and it's very hard, is to try to get what is made in Canada. I tried to find out what Michelin makes in the tree plants in Nova Scotia, so then I can actually promote the tire that's made there. But I don't know what's made there. So I'm going to order a tire that comes in, it's made in the U.S., it's charged the tariffs. Okay, but if you can somehow maybe send me or send someone a copy of what's made in Nova Scotia and what's made in Canada.
Yeah, So I really appreciate this, Don. So I guess a couple of things, and I think this will be a good example of really why what Donald Trump is doing is so insane, to be honest, because the supply chain is so tightly integrated. So, a manufacturer that have operations in Canada, the United States, and maybe even Mexico are moving product back and forth. So a part would be done here, a part would be done there, and back and forth. That's why with the auto industry, they say those auto parts go back and forth across the border 7 times. One factory does one bit of, I don't know what, I don't want to get, I don't know all the technicalities, but does something and then sends it back to the other plant that is specialized. So that's why the integration is so important. But I guess what I would say is I'm not a tariff guy. I'm a free trade guy. So I don't like this whole tariff discussion. But the letter that I wrote was just it was kind of a proactive step to ask the federal government to watch for dumping, not importing, but dumping. So when a foreign manufacturer is making a product and then they just dump it into the Canadian market very cheaply. So I said, we have to, with the trade tensions we have right now, we have to be conscious of that. So, but Michelin is an incredible employer. They've been in Nova Scotia for over 50 years. I know they'll be here for 50 more. Like they love the employees they have here. They love what, the workforce, the vocation, all that stuff is really important to Michelin. So they're a great friend to Nova Scotia. But that letter in general was just to say, like, in the trade tensions, we have to be careful that nobody dumps whatever it is, lumber, tires, into our market and causes further disruption. So that was a proactive step. But to your point on, buy local, and that's, we're all on the Nova Scotia Loyal program and identifying Canadian products, identifying Nova Scotia products. So I totally take your point on that, and I'll see if we can find anything more on the specific product that you're asking about tires. But I really appreciate you calling in, Don.
Okay, and I know, like, Michelin has a Privacy Act, and they don't want to divulge what they make in their plants, but maybe they can make an exception on what's going on in the world today.
Maybe they're great people, so I don't mind chatting with them.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay,
Don.
thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Paulette, hello.
Hi, I got three things I'd like to ask, but I'm going to ask the first one. I've probably got nothing. All right. I had just heard today, I stop and I hear people talking, and a lot of seniors can't use internet. And I heard the Bank of Nova Scotia is getting rid of their banking machines, and even the people that are working there, that will all have to go online. And the old people, no, I can't. I'm a senior. I can't go online. And then there's another thing. This is just telling you, right? I believe that Putin and Trump are friends because they both are after the same thing. That Putin wants peace with Ukraine. Trump wants to take over Ukraine. And I think Putin wants to concentrate on the north of Canada, and Trump wants the rest of Canada. That's what I think. And here's the other thing I'm not sure of, but if there's 3 American auto companies being paid in American money here in Canada, wouldn't it pay them to stay in Canada where our dollar's worth less? Maybe, if that is so, maybe more American companies would move to Canada where the American dollar's worth more, and that our money's worth a lot less. They'd make more money.
Okay, all right. That's a lot in one question, Paulette, so the Premier's going to try and respond here.
Well, thank you, Paulette, and you're definitely a very thoughtful person. So I appreciate you sharing your insight and thoughts with me here today. So a couple of things. I do agree that there's a certain part of the population that's not online. Some might be seniors, but some, it's not only seniors. Some people just aren't online. So we do need to be careful as more and more moves online that we don't leave people behind. I absolutely agree with you. That is a challenge. But also, I think you might be surprised that, I think the percentage of seniors that are online is even higher than, middle age, if you would. So there's a lot of seniors online. And I know that because I get emails from them, but I talk to them as well. But your point about just making sure that accessibility of services like banking, like government services, that's really important. So I don't want to lose sight of that. So I appreciate you sharing that. The Putin-Trump thing, it's so bizarre that Donald Trump would have tariffs on Canada. We share values. We've been to war. We've literally fought beside each other in wars. We've been through a lot. He has tariffs on Canada, but not Russia. What does that tell you? So there's something to be concerned about there. I absolutely agree with you on that. And in terms of the dollar is a factor in all of these things. We just talked about supply chains, and one company could have factories in both countries, maybe even 3 if you add in Mexico, and the dollar is a factor in that. The labor force is another factor. So there's lots of moving parts to that. But the reason that we have to hit back so strongly on these tariffs, and we can't just let this slide, is because the longer a trade war goes on, the more dangerous it is that we do lose manufacturing to other parts. But they are also evaluating a risk that they lose business to Canada. We're not weak. We're really not.
Okay, Paulette. Hopefully that addressed your question.
Can I ask one more question?
No, we're up against a break. I apologize. Quickly, Ken asked this: do we still have a Starlink contract here in the province?
Yeah, so we had a program where if you didn't have access to internet through other means, the province would subsidize you establishing internet through satellite. Mm-hmm. Starlink would have been one of the providers on there. I'd have to check if that program, certainly in the beginning, 3 years ago, it was used quite a bit. Mm-hmm. But we've got a lot of internet coverage around the province. I don't know if there's any subsidy money going out on that right now. But Ken, thank you for flagging that. I will definitely check that today.
Okay, fair enough. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with the Premier when we come back. All right, continuing with the Premier of the province, Tim Houston, here in studio, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Neil, hello.
Yeah, good morning, Todd and Mr. Premier. How are you?
We're well.
Hi, Neil. We're doing just great. Unless you're going to take my lumps now, am I?
No, yeah, I may as well, eh? Premier, I just have a question about small business. I operate a small driving school, and I recently got approved for the motorcycle course last year. A lot of my instructors have years of experience, and we completed more a recognized program across the country, gearing up with Canada Safety Council. I've been having trouble 18 months getting what they call signing authority for my people to have signing authority so they can write off the motorcycle license. Currently with the course, we offer it, second course next to safety services, but I just want to have the same privileges that they have, and I'm having a hard time through public works getting it done. And then I just got one more question to add to that. The snowplow operators, is there going to be any movement on their wage? Right now they're at $23.65, which is a person can be on EI and earn just as much. With such an important position in Nova Scotia, I just don't understand why the province hasn't acted on this, where the MLA just recently gave themselves a 29% raise. And I'll hang up and let you answer, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks for calling in. So, I actually have a 5A, so I've taken a motorcycle course like you're talking about, but it wasn't yesterday. Let's say that it was quite some time ago. So I guess what you're after is you do the weekend course. If you pass and meet the standards, which you're qualified to assess, you want to be able to give the license right on at that point in time. And I'll be happy to take that one back and talk to Public Works and maybe if we can get an email from Neil on what his company name is or something, we can maybe follow up on that, Neil. But in terms of I absolutely agree that the fine folks that work at Public Works and keep our roads safe and build our roads and operate the really important gear that we rely on, I do hear from them about their compensation package and how it's falling behind some of the private operators or even some of the municipalities. So I guess what I would say, Neil, is that would be the union negotiations. We'll negotiate in good faith on that. I think our track record on labor is pretty good. I think we negotiated with one that's in the works now, like almost 290 collective agreements with very, very little labor disruption. So I think we've been fair, we've been honest, we've been tough at times for sure. But I believe in the collective bargaining process, and I know when those folks come up that we'll have a frank, fair discussion with them as well. But I certainly appreciate you flagging that, and I'll check on the other one for you.
Okay, there you go, Ian. Hello.
Good morning. Thank you for the privilege to talk to you.
Who are you talking to, me or the Premier? No, just kidding.
Oh, both of you.
I was kidding.
I am currently a CCA or a continuing care, and I do home care in the city. But I also have degrees in education that I got here and was a teacher as well. But I really like your common sense approach, Mr. Premier, and this is one thing that just baffles me. So I've been a CCA for close to 15 years now. I'm still like a certified teacher, yet I cannot teach the CCA course. It is required that you be an LPN to teach the course. And, I guess it assumes that nurses can teach. I know they're good at their subject matter, but it gives no way for somebody like me who's been doing it for over a decade and has the training and experience in teaching to teach the course.
So Ian, where would you? So sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but where would you be wanting to teach on the job in the workplace, or like at NSCC or an institution?
Well, right now I'm working full time, and today is actually my birthday. But I'm looking down the road saying maybe at some point, if I wanted to go and be, say, part-time CCA and teach for either the company that I work for or another, say, Eastern College or something like that.
Okay.
I can't even apply. They won't even consider me.
Okay, so let's say this first thing. Happy birthday!
For sure.
Thank you.
And I hope it's a great one for you. And thank you for 15 years as a CCA. You got a tough job. So I appreciate your service through teaching and through providing healthcare and support for Nova Scotians. There's been so much movement in this space. I mean, obviously we're paying for tuition for people to get into it. We know we need CCAs, so we're always looking for ways to have more people enter the workforce as CCAs and be qualified. So I think there are ongoing discussions with certain employers on the job training, allowing them to provide more training. Of course, through the community college, we're doing training. So I think your thought process on, well, if you need more CCAs and you need more people to train them, and here I am, I have experience in teaching and I have experience in delivering healthcare is solid. So that's something that we'd have to look at how they hire these mentors on the job or teachers in the classroom. But I mean, I would encourage you to speak to your employer too, to see if there's any mentorship roles that you could do. You have a lot to give, obviously.
Well, I have done mentorship in the past, and I will be doing that. But in terms of actually teaching the course itself, there's a rule. I think it's the Department of Higher Education that excludes anybody who does not have an LPN from teaching it or an RN. And I'm just thinking, well, why don't they make allowance for somebody? I mean, even if it was me teaching some of the experience and not the anatomy. I mean, you could have.
Yeah, I mean, or maybe maybe you challenge it or something. So point taken. So I do appreciate you flagging that one for me, and hope you have a great birthday.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and thank you for listening, because your common sense approach, I just thought this is one you probably don't know about.
I didn't,
and it would help everybody involved. So
more brain power
okay.
support.
Ian, thanks for the call.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you.
All right, take care. You got it. Gloria, hello. Hi, Gloria.
Hello, Todd. Good morning, Mr. Premier.
Hello, Gloria. Good to hear your voice.
I don't have a question. I have a few comments. Mr. Premier, we had an election. The people looked at the candidates. You got a huge mandate. You got the opportunity to boost the economy of Nova Scotia and do what we need to do. We've been a have-not province long enough. The naysayers out there, Mr. Premier, will be there until the cows come home. You can consult with them until you're black in the face or red in the face, and it won't make any difference. So stick to your guns. I know what you do will be fair, and I know what you do will be safe. So hang in there, Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Gloria. I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me.
Thanks, Gloria.
Thanks, Todd.
Take care.
Okay, take care. 902-405-6000. I think it's blue in the face. It's the term that she was looking for.
I'll go with that one.
Yeah, okay. Dave, hello.
Yes, good morning. Firstly, gentlemen, thanks for taking my call. Premier, thank you for coming on the Veinotte show, Todd Veinotte show. It's a very, very important platform in this city where you're talking to boots on the ground. You're in the front lines here dealing with questions. Now, I'm going to get to my question very shortly, but quite frankly, I think we got caught with our pants down in this country by poor federal governance. We decided to go down the green path and shut down the prosperity of our country. Now, yesterday there was a demonstration downtown already, climate people, I guess. I don't want to call them tree huggers exactly. Coming from BC, that's a popular name. So I've seen your name acquainted with Trump and democracy, not autocracy. How are you going to deal with that? Now, did I hear you lifted the bans already on fracking? And if I'm not mistaken, did you say that we're getting our natural gas from the U.S. to power our electricity over at Tufts Cove?
Yeah, we are.
So my point is, when are we going to get cracking on, and how long is it going to take to start getting the industries of, say, fracking going? Because it's there, right? We have a richness. You tell us that we have all kinds of natural resources that we should be taking advantage of. And like I said, this is a wake-up call, in my opinion, right? Things are going to have to change, and this is not a bad thing, sir. So I think our federal, and look at down south, the Democrats took the new Green New Deal. Trump that's gone. That's gone. We're moving forward on natural. How are you going to deal with the folks that are going to be demonstrating and you're going to have lots of things in your way. You know that as a premier, you've been around long enough. How are you going to deal with that, sir? And I'll hang up and listen to your answer.
Thanks, Dave.
Well, thanks, Dave. Thanks for the question and the observation. But yeah, we are a rich country in terms of natural resources. We have every potential, and it can be done safely. So we need to have those discussions, and we're going to have them. And as I say to my team, that at times we're just going to have to pin our ears back and move forward. But we listen carefully. I think I've shown that I listen to Nova Scotians, and I understand their concerns. So, and I share them. We need to walk carefully, but we need to walk. So we will, and that's happening. Listen, Donald Trump is a person who is set on harming Canada, and he wants to harm Canadians, and he wants to hurt Nova Scotians. And so when I see people compare anyone to him, I just think that that's so it's sad and unfair. You're talking about somebody who wants to destroy your country, and you're comparing somebody to them. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Including Pierre Poilievre.
It's just ridiculous. But it's very dangerous. And here's the reason it's dangerous is because you have somebody like Donald Trump who's an existential threat to our country. And every time you say, well, this person is just like them, or this person, you start to normalize that behavior. And that's a dangerous, dangerous mindset. So do better.
Fair enough. 902-405-6000. We get the premier to the bottom of the hour. 902-405-6000. We'll be back.
Thanks.
All right, a few more questions with the premier to the bottom of the hour, and we appreciate your participation. Phones have been jammed the entire time. Jesse, hello.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Just, I guess, kind of a quick question. I don't know how much you're aware, Premier, just with how the labor laws work from province to province. I'm just wondering why, it seems that your time is valued more in one province than the other. Like, for example, in Alberta, you get overtime after 40 hours in basically any industry, whereas there's special clauses inside of ours in Nova Scotia, where, say, someone in construction has to work more than 110 hours consecutively in 2 consecutive weeks, or people in hospitality are eligible until after 48 hours. Why is there that difference?
So would these be provincial labor laws you're talking about, or company specific?
Yeah. Yeah, no, provincial.
Okay.
Personally, I think that the provincially should kind of, if we had a base of, say, 40, like some other provinces, then, especially in trades, you're going to entice a lot more people to stay because those companies have the option to not potentially pay out overtime unless they work over 110 hours. And, you think it'd be beneficial also for the province, too, because you guys would be getting more taxes because people would be getting paid a higher wage. Anyways, I'll let you go. Thanks.
No, thanks for flagging that, Jesse. And I'm kind of, as you're talking, I'm kind of thinking the interprovincial trade stuff because, we have all these trade barriers and and now we sit here and we say, well, how'd that happen? Well, over years and years, some just keep adding more on. So it would be a guess as to why that would be, but I would guess that over the years, they probably tried to determine that some job is more mentally straining or physically straining, or so a certain number of hours is different than another job or occupation. But it's only a guess. I'd have to go. But I didn't realize there was that much of a disparity across different sectors. But I'd have to go back and really look at that one. But appreciate you flagging it. Didn't know that.
Okay, Chris. Hello.
Good morning, Mr. Premier and Todd.
Hi there.
I have two questions. First one, and to be transparent, my wife and I voted for you twice, and we support 100% your stand on resource development. And anecdotally, most of the people that I speak to around this province, they agree with it as well. What I don't agree with, Mr. Premier, is raising the tolls on the Cobequid Pass to truckers coming in from the States, because that's basically the group that you're targeting, is it not? The commercial truckers.
Yeah, so it is for sure. So thank you, Chris, and thank you for the support. And we're going to keep working hard to keep earning that support. So thank you for that. Tolls are such a discussion right now. The taking off the tolls on the bridges in Halifax is one that, it's amazing the emotions over that. But the reason we're taking that off is it's the last toll in the province, and I just think it's inherently unfair that some people pay a toll to go to work or to the hospital and nobody else does. So we'll take those off soon. We took the tolls off the Cobequid Pass for Nova Scotians. We did that a couple of years ago. There still remains a toll for non-Nova Scotians. Now, right now, in this trade war, That's what it is. We have increased the tolls for commercial traffic from the United States. And the reason we've done that is we want to be a constant reminder that there's an issue here, folks. And we want those truckers to go back home and say, those Canadians are really upset about this, and have that discussion in their community. So that's an in-your-face tactic that is because of the trade war.
But excuse me, Mr. Premier, I don't mean to interrupt.
No trouble.
I really think that's the wrong approach. They're not going to go back to the States saying how pissed off in Canada we are about that. They're going to be going back feeling hard done by, having anger directed at them that they don't deserve. They're only trying to make a living. They have nothing to do with these tolls, these tariffs. It's Trump. And they don't like it any more than we do. And if it was me, maybe I'd give them free tolls. Don't charge them anything. They're important to our supply chain. Then they'd go back to the States saying, hey, look at how we were treated. I think that you'd get more success with that than you ever will by penalizing someone by doubling their tolls when it's not their fault. There's nothing they can do about it themselves, and they're just out there trying to make a living and keep our supply chains open. Okay. What are your thoughts on that?
So you like the honey approach?
I don't
mind the honey approach too, but I'm going to take this one away, Chris. You made an impression on me. I'm going to think about it, because the non-tariff measures, the booze off the shelves, American, not allowing American companies to respond to tenders from the province and stuff, they will continue to evolve. And look, it's still my hope that this tariff situation gets resolved and we have no tariffs. I know there's a lot of brain power and a lot of diplomacy happening towards that, and I'll certainly do my part on that. But I take your point on. I'm going to put that in the category of constantly assessing the non-tariff measures that Nova Scotia is doing, and I'm going to take that.
Well, I'm certainly not in a position of power like you are, or whatever. But I really do think that the honey approach, if you want to call it that, I think that would go a lot farther. And you said it yourself. The commercial tolls from the United States truckers coming in across the Copperwood Pass is a very minute part of the whole scenario, is it not?
It's symbolic.
So you're not going to really be giving up all that
for sure.
much.
Yeah, it's symbolic for sure. But no, Chris, thank you for. I appreciate that discussion.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate the call, pal.
Thanks for the time.
All right, take care. You got it. Mark, hello.
Hey, gentlemen, how are you?
We're well.
I have a question. I am a local commercial truck driver, and as you may or may not know, when you renew your license, you have to have a medical done. I don't have a family doctor. I've gone to walk-in clinics. I've called a couple of different phone numbers, and nobody can seem to give me an answer. Access Nova Scotia can't give me an answer. How am I supposed to renew my driver's license if I don't have a doctor to get a medical done?
Yeah, I used to hear about this one a lot. I haven't heard about it that much, so I thought we kind of fixed that, to be honest, Mark. But if you maybe shoot an email into, we're gonna find you. We want you working, and we don't want you not working because you can't get a piece of paper. So let's make sure we get you in that system.
How did you do that?
How would we do that?
Yeah.
Well, I think some of the walk-in clinics will do it, but I have to check as to where we can direct people to people who do this. But we need you working.
Yeah, because it's. I mean, I can't unless I'm going to drive my truck illegally. I don't have a way to make a living after the middle.
When do you need it by, Mark?
The middle of the month.
Middle of the month.
And I've been looking for a while. I did contact a lady at Maple. I had an appointment with LPN, and she did send me for blood work. And she was going to send a requisition to a bunch of these different places to see who could do it, but she said it might be 4 months.
Yeah, no, we'll figure this one out. As I say, it was happening a lot. I was hearing about it a lot more, sort of at the peak crisis, let's say, when the list was way up almost 170,000. But we are attaching people. We are opening up new access to care channels, and we seem to be making some progress. But we need you working, and we don't want you driving illegally. Government should never make a policy that makes a criminal out of an ordinary citizen. So we don't want you driving illegally. So let's get some details, and we'll take that one offline, Mark, and hopefully we can help you.
Sounds good.
Okay, Mark. Thanks a lot. All right, we left a lot of people on hold, Mr. Premier. I know you're tight on time. Thank you for the hour. Appreciate you coming in.
This is great. It's helpful for me. I appreciate the people that call in because these are, it's where I hear what's really happening and where the issues are. So we're not perfect, but we're working hard on these things, and I think we live in a pretty good province with lots of potential, and we just want to make sure we realize that. So.
Okay. All right. We'll continue with your general calls. Just me, no Premier, when we come back.
Facts.
All right, that was a good hour with the Premier, and we appreciated very much him coming in and taking your calls out of his busy schedule. So in the meantime, we'll take your general calls, just me, no Premier. But that's all right. I'm sure that some of you might want to still participate in our call-in. And we will take calls between 12:30 and 1 as well, just so we give everybody a full hour for just the general calls and open hour. The way to reach us, of course, is 902-405-6000. So if you're on hold thinking that you're going to talk to the Premier, you are not. I apologize, but we only had so much time for the Premier. So if you want to talk to me and the rest of our audience, stay on hold. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Hi, Paul.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. The Premier's gone. Hopefully that's okay with you.
Yep. Well, it was more of a concern. I'm a native of New Brunswick. Traveled to Nova Scotia quite a bit, but we have the similar deal about the fracking. I just want to voice my concerns over it. I'm not opposed to it. To be honest with you, I'm not. The companies do things. The only thing, biggest concern I have is what do you do with the water? We need millions of liters of water, fresh water. We have plenty of seawater, but the problem is salt and metal don't mix very well. So when they shoot this water, they do transfers, because I'm not part of a fracking crew, but I was part of the servicing of the sites, like bringing in products for absorption before they put the tanks on and the liners and all that. And I was part of the cleanup team afterwards, but I was also part of the crew that would bring in water. They do transfer from one site to the next to try to limit the consumption of water. But we're looking at millions of liters of water. We do not have the water table in New Brunswick or Nova Scotia to handle that. If they could figure out a way to use seawater, we have plenty of that.
Yeah, that's a concern for sure, Paul. Absolutely it is. I don't know what I can add to it, but I get it.
No. But if the Premier is really serious about fracking,
mm-hmm.
Yes, they have companies that are they're very safety orientated. I won't put nobody down. I won't name no names. I was out there for 10 and a half years. And if they talk to them, they're going to spin it like everything's positive and all that. But what if the Premier could, because I know there's Nova Scotians that worked on those frac crews, he could talk to people with boots on the ground, with experience on what they had to do, what they experienced, what they saw, and how it was done more than I could. That would make more sense than trying to talk to experts that want to spin it to their advantage. You understand what I'm saying?
Okay. Thanks, Paul. I appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Hi, Barry. Barry, are you there? Okay, I'll let Barry go. 902-405-6000. Hi, Joe.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, you?
Not too bad. Sorry about that. I wanted to talk to Premier because I talked to him during his election run, and maybe you would know because you talked to them, and maybe the next time that they're on, you could bring up this for me because I talked to him about potable water as a renter. I live in a 50-year-old, an apartment complex for 50-year-olds and older. And we live on a city street, but we have well water, not city water. And they did a water test last year, this time, and they've never ever given me the results of the water test. Every other neighbor that lives in my building, all 24 of them, have said that they don't use the water at all. I have 2 bathrooms and a kitchen sink. And when I did rent the place, they said the only water you can drink from is the cold tap in the kitchen sink. Since then, I've got to know my neighbors. I've talked to them, and they tell me that there is organic matter along with heavy metals in the water. I want to go check out the testing of my water, but it's a $200 test, and I really can't afford that for something that they did, and they should tell me about it. And I don't have potable water. Now, he wasn't aware of that when we discussed that to them. He said he would get back to me. 6 months later, he hasn't gotten back to me. I've called his office a couple of times on it. They haven't gotten back to me. I was wondering if you can ask them, and maybe you can get an answer.
Well, I'm not sure, Joe, really, to be honest with you. Do you have access to email?
Yes, I do.
Okay, would you mind sending us an email, and then we can forward that along? Perhaps that might be the best plan of attack.
Excellent. I will get to that tomorrow. I have a busy day today, but I can do that I can send you that tomorrow.
Do that, and I'll forward it along to the Premier.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks so much. 902-405-6000. Hi, Doug.
Hello?
Hi there. Go ahead.
Hey, how you doing? I just want to make a comment there. This all started many years ago. I wrote an article in the paper 45 years ago. What all started this whole mess we're into was years ago, Pierre Trudeau got in power. Then ever since then, they had labor strikes, unions, and all this kind of stuff, socialism, all this stuff. Basically, in a nutshell, we priced our labor up so high we can't afford to buy and trade with our own people in our own country. So we started buying stuff from China. And then Mulroney come along and said, "Oh, we have free trade." That just made it more worse. So you buy something today, you don't know what parts are going to fit in what. So we're in a situation right now. The United States is in the same thing to some extent. The socialism stuff. That's got to stop. You can't have a country that one guy is making $50 an hour and another guy get 20 and doing the same job. Unions have got to go. They ruined the economy of our country. They've done the same thing in Argentina. They've done the same thing in other countries, right? So the problem is we're in a mess. And it's going to be one heck of a job to get out of this mess. They can blame Trump. They can blame who you want. It's the unions. It's the same as in the States. They go squawking all the time for big money. And, I have no problem with people getting paid decent wage. That's not a problem. But when they come out and say, well, we want this, we want. There's an old saying. Government says when the government, anybody from the government comes to your house and says, okay, I'm from the government and I'll give you anything you want, you just run like hell because they don't know, and they don't know how to vote up here. They vote Liberal every time. They vote Liberal for Trudeau. They vote him 3 times. They voted him in. They don't do no research. I've done all kinds of research. You have no idea what's coming down the pipe, my buddy. You have no idea what's coming down the tubes. World Economic Forum. Our country's going to be in a mess if we don't do something soon because China's going to come on in here, so it's going to handle this. We either support the United States or let China come in here and take us over. We had 2 choices. We got to start smartening up right now.
So you're saying you
support Pierre Poilievre and get him out of there, change our structure.
All right, I'm going to let you go. I'm not sure where you go. Like, first of all, on the union thing, somebody very wise once told me, and I belonged to a union once in my life, and it was when I was working as a video journalist for Global News, and that's a unionized gig. And so I get the pitfalls of unionization, but somebody very wise once said to me that the employer will pay you as little as they possibly can every time. And I believe that to be true. It would be nice to think that people would be good-willed and want to pay people, but generally speaking, the employer will not look out for you without having some leverage. And I think that unions had a role, a big role, and I think they still have a role. Again, imperfect. I get it, but look, folks, unionized work has a role in the labor field. And I do believe that. This coming from somebody, again, who's not a union card-carrying guy at all, only had a union membership for a small period of time in my career. But I still think that they have a role in the labor force. And as far as supporting Donald Trump and the United States right now, I don't know how any red-blooded Canadian can say that. I really don't. Honestly, don't know how. When you look at the vitriol and the absolute plain language that he uses when it comes to this country and wanting to rip it apart, and the attack on our sovereignty unending, including his press secretary laughing about it yesterday, saying Canada 51st state, with a chuckle. It is absolutely mind-blowing how people can sit here in Canada and support that. I have no idea how you can do that. That's just my opinion. 902-405-6000, that's the way to reach us. Hi, Barry.
Hi. Watching the thing on Fox News this morning, Peter Navarro, the man of truth, said that the Mexican drug cartels have taken over Canada and they're making these false prescription drugs and slipping them into the United States. Now, I don't know if the Mexican drug cartels know they're doing that, but this is what, because they were speaking about what Trudeau said about hardly any fentanyl going into the States, and now Mr. Navarro, who just got out of jail halfway through the Republican convention before the election, is telling this story. Now, how do you combat BS like that? And that's what it is. I think if drug cartels were making artificial prescription drugs in Canada and took over our country, we'd know about it.
Well, I mean, look, how much fentanyl is entering the United States through American ports and the American airports and through like the whole concept that this is about fentanyl is not true. That is a fallacy. It is simply not true. It's about Donald Trump wanting to tear apart our economy and our country so that because he has his sights set on making us the 51st state. He's not lying about it. He means that when he says that. That's not rhetoric.
In that balcony, the night he made the speech, there were 8 billionaires.
Yeah.
8.
Yeah.
And by the way, now that Europe's thinking about increasing their up to 3.5% on military spending, guess who supplies most of their military?
Probably the American
right?
military complex.
Destabilizing. Now, these guys wouldn't do that, would they? To increase they've had all the wealth. The 3 richest guys right now, and this is no lie, you can check it out, could run, equals $1 trillion. Our budget for the federal government is $500 billion. They could actually run this whole country for 2 years. Now, no way should 3 people have enough wealth to do that. When you got all the money in the world that you can use, the only thing left is more power. And that's what's running the Republican Party, and that's, unfortunately, they wanted to try to destroy us. But the automotive industry, it's going to collapse, this tariff thing anyway, because the United States it'll destroy them. It'll put us into a depression like the 1930s. That's what a lot of the American businessmen are saying now.
Yeah. Okay, Barry. Thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, new regulations that came into effect March 1st are designed to strengthen the Elver fishery in Nova Scotia, according to the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. The new rules require Elver fishing and possession license holders to submit reports to help manage the movement of Elvers within the export supply chain. These regulations apply to both domestic and foreign caught Elvers. Joining us to discuss this is Brian Giroux of the Shelburne Elver Group. Brian, thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, no problem. Hi.
All right, so what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's increased the paperwork and reporting burden on us, probably about quadrupled it in terms of at least 3 times. Every step of the way, you got to report before you go fishing. You got to tell them where you're going, what's your plan for the night, And then, then once the eels are caught, you got to bring them back, and they got to go through a chain of custody into the facilities, and then as they leave, they've got to be, same sort of thing, chain of custody, identifying numbers, export licenses, and all that kind of stuff. So it's added maybe 3 times the amount of paperwork that we used to do on a regular basis, but, that paperwork was 2 years ago was kind of struck down in a court decision that said the dockside monitoring didn't apply to any place except for at the dock. So they were scrambling to try to find a replacement anyway. We really, we're adapting to that now. There's training sessions and even another one today. So we're just trying to adapt to it.
Okay, so a lot of trepidation, though, surrounding all this, considering what's gone on over the past couple of years, I would think, still.
Oh, for sure. And, this is not going to stop. This is the same basic failed strategy the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and then basically hobbled by the Public Prosecution Service, has pursued for 25 years after the Marshall decisions. Basically, they don't interrupt them while they're fishing. They're just trying to stop the buyers and stop the export and stop the supply chains. So imagine this scenario. Right now, Public Prosecution Service isn't doing anything to stop a First Nation person that may be stopped on a river fishing without a license. Now, they may claim they are, and sometimes there is a charge here and there, but it's next to nothing because the fishery officers are being held back so severely. So anyway, right now, basically, if you approach a group of 20 people that are fishing illegally, and just before you get there, they dump their eels back into the river, there is no possession problem.
All right. So, what changes do you think? I mean, enforcement is obviously a real challenge here, a real issue here. Why do you think enforcement has got to? What are the circumstances that have led to this? Do you think?
The department really, and the federal government and the Public Prosecution Service, all letting down the enforcement branch. Giving them an impossible remit, not backing them up in the courts when they file charges, so therefore then charges become few and far between. And then basically the fundamental problem is that not regulating the First Nations as the Supreme Court of Canada told them to regulate this modest livelihood right. They are not doing it. They're dancing around, throwing money at people and saying, well, right now, for example, Todd, we hear rumors that there's 400 to 600 fishers being recruited by two of the largest bands in the province that have no agreement with DFO.
Okay, so throw quotas at the window then, obviously, if that's the case, right?
Almost, and then you, like I say, you basically sanction your own fishery officers for doing their job. They go on strike in an unprecedented move twice last year because their workplace is unsafe and management is not listening to them. And then eventually management is sanctioned by the labor board. I mean, this government is out of control. Law and order doesn't exist in their vocabulary, and it's only going to get worse and worse. This is when you do this and you don't enforce any rules, it goes from 10 people to 20 to 400 to 700 to 1,000 people because there's no consequence. I'm not saying right now the First Nations has 62-point-something% of the fishery. Public Prosecution Service says better shut up, because they were saying we were not proceeding with charges until they have a meaningful share. So 62% is a meaningful share. Now do your job and start proceeding with charges, or else it's just going to get worse, Todd. If they've never enforced a law in the city, say for stoplights and speeding, what would be the what would be the consequences of that in 2 years' time?
All right. Is there what about the language from DFO? Are they talking like they're going to step up enforcement?
They're saying yes, but again, the Public Prosecution Service is hiding, and they are the linchpin problem here. There's some discussions about launching a massive civil action against them to get them to do their job or pay the consequences of that. Who is telling them not to enforce the law of the land here? Who is telling them that? Who's making that decision? This has ruined our industry for how many years now, Todd? Ruined it. And the fishery officers have tried to do their job. Their hands are tied by both public prosecution and by management. So, it's, I think they're going to try. I think they're going to try to start pushing charges into that public prosecution black box. But I don't know what the track record would speak for itself. They do next to nothing when it comes to First Nations. And look, I'm not saying they should overemphasize it with any one group of people. But when you've got a situation that's out of control, you got to start cracking down at some point.
Well, again, it should be pretty simple. If you don't have a license, you shouldn't be fishing.
Well, again, the Public Prosecution Service has said that on many quotable occasions, quoted by ADMs, quoted by local senior officials, quoted in newspaper articles, they would not be proceeding with charges until they had a meaningful share of the fishery. This is the same thing that happened in lobsters. They've chased the buyers and chased the buyers and chased the buyers, but what they let happen in Soniaville last year was a crime against nature. They let people go unregulated, unreported, wide open fishery, and did whatever they wanted, but then they tried to chase buyers. Well, those lobsters are already dead. You know what? It's the same as the eels. What are you going to do? You're going to not stop them on the river, but you're going to play a cat and mouse game with the buyers. Todd, did you see that article I sent you?
I did, yes.
From Aaron Bestwick?
Yeah.
Last year, in a closed fishery, and we've confronted them about this at the department, you it's fine to take away the commercial licenses. Then you hobble your fish officers, you send them out, then you sanction some of them for doing their job. But last year, they would refuse to put what's called an FMO in place, which would have made any activity on the rivers illegal. And as it stands, 33,000 kilograms of eels made it to the marketplace. Now, to be fair, a big chunk of that could be Caribbean eels, maybe, let's say, 15,000 kilos, 15 tons, let's say. Well, that still leaves 15 tons of eels that were made into the marketplace from the rest of Canada, Atlantic Canada, sorry, and the quota, really, legal quota is only 9,960. So they had every opportunity last year to catch all these people exporting eels at the border. What happened? Nothing, virtually. 2 small busts. They had every opportunity to catch these people at the rivers. Oh, they got into an education mode. They would not charge them. They would go up to a group of people and they would say, you're doing something illegal, leave. And they'd leave, and the next night they would go back because fisher officers weren't there. So they had the opportunity last year to get this under control. All they decided to do was ruin the careers of some of their own fishery officers because a legal bust turned into a protest, and a craven minister decided not to enforce the law, and she basically sanctioned her own people. Now imagine the morale in that department right now and the willingness to go out and do this job right now.
Okay, so what's the status with your business? Because you get a lot of people relying on this on your season, and you have a lot of employees here, right? So what's the status here?
We're prepping up. We're getting the training sessions. We're getting our nets ready. We're getting everything ready. I think the technical opening date is the 17th, but it's been such a nasty winter. It's probably going to be delayed by winter and ice and all that kind of stuff. We're not going to fish really in earnest until the water warms up a bit and the air warms up a bit. But the price is low this year, probably because of so much poaching last year. Yeah. They can get they can get illegal eels cheaper than they can get legal eels. So that's been the direct financial consequence. So the market I've been dealing with, basically the buyers are saying the price is about half this year. It would be in an average year.
Okay, so how do you educate your fishers to go out there and not avoid conflict and clashes with poachers? That must be difficult, I would think.
Well, I'd like to tell you that we've had some serious discussions internally, and we can try to control people, and we do control people. It doesn't mean we can't shout at them and say, get lost, and call the fisher officers and RCMP and stuff like that. But really, nobody wants physical altercations. I mean, it's just too easy. So, basically move along. That's all we ask. There's plenty of rivers in this province. Just stay out of our face. We've been here for 26 years. You find another place to fish. But I mean, I wish we had a government that would step up to the plate and stop the destruction that's unfolding, both in our industry and in lobsters right now. And the consequence of them taking from us and then not enforcing the rules in our industry and in lobsters last year, the entire industry, forget about the tariffs, the entire industry is basically scratching their head and saying, why would I invest a dime in the fishery when it's so unpredictable and unstable and the government can do whatever it wants, whenever it wants? So they've ruined the investment environment in this industry for at least a little while until it stabilizes and people realize there is a rule of law somewhere and this will have a consequence.
Okay, Brian, appreciate your time. Thanks, and we'll follow up.
Yeah, thank you, man.
All right, take care. Brian Giroux of the Shelburne Elver Group. Nova Scotia failing to hold universities to account for spending, according to the Auditor General. Kim Adair joins us when we come back. Continuing with your calls. By the way, we will open the phone lines again between 12:30 and 1 today. So if you don't get on to the top of the hour, we will make room for you at the bottom of the hour, 12:30 to 1 o'clock, when we'll continue with open lines. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. David, hello.
Good morning, Todd. Sorry to bother you about the tariffs again, but I was just wondering if there any way you can get in touch with, I know Tim Powers you usually have every Friday, so I imagine he'd have a lot to say. Jordy Morgan for the small business. And Clayton Wilkins probably might have a few things to say about the tariffs as well. So that's my say on that, and you have a good day.
Okay, thanks. Take care. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Alan, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, you?
Great. I want to talk about the two bridges, Dartmouth to Halifax.
Yeah.
I'm led to believe that the tolls will be eliminated on those bridges.
Not led to believe they are being eliminated April 1st.
Okay. My question is, have they given any thoughts to the future for these two bridges? Like, what kind of monies are they putting aside now for future repairs? Because repairs on those two bridges, if I recollect, were quite expensive in the past, and I doubt that they are going to be more expensive in the future. Who's going to pay for those expensive repairs if there's no tolls to be had?
Taxpayers.
Right. So what brilliant politician thought of that one?
Well, I think it's a good idea personally. Why not share the responsibility across the province?
Well, if you don't use it, why should you pay for it?
Well, do you play hockey?
No.
Well, you're paying for rinks. Do you use transit?
No.
Well, you're paying for transit. On and on it goes, Alan. I can give you 1,000. I don't mean to be flippant with you, but this is the nature of our budgets. It's the collective pays for it. I don't use a lot of things that my taxes go into. I don't have kids in the school system anymore, but but my taxes go to support school system. For years and for decades and decades, I didn't need health care. Thank God I do now, but I didn't, and I paid for health care. That's the way it is, Alan. That's the nature of how we live.
Well, I think that we're going to agree to disagree, because to me it does not make sense that the user, even though how does it benefit me that there's a bridge there that I never use? What benefit do I get out of it?
Well, Alan, like I already said, how does it benefit you to have recreation? How does it benefit you to have? I could go on with dozens and dozens of examples.
I understand your examples, and some of them make sense, but the bulk of them, I do derive a benefit from it. Education. My children grow up and give me a better lifestyle.
Well, Alan, let me ask you this, pal. Let me ask you this. What part of the province do you live in? Do you mind if I ask you that?
I don't mind at all. I live in Porter's Lake.
Okay.
I live in the country. I don't have services really, because I'm in the country. I get garbage pickup once every 2 weeks, every week.
Okay, but you got a road infrastructure where you're at. You probably have small bridges going to your community, I would assume, right?
Yes.
Okay, so why not? Why should I have to pay for a road that I never use in Porter's Lake? I never go to Porter's Lake. Why should I have to pay for that?
Makes sense. But alternatively, if people using the bridge pay for the bridge in the form of a toll, we've got an awful lot of tourists coming into Nova Scotia. They help, and that's a great big chunk of money that we're losing out on. Now, the tolls in Quebequid, they eliminated Nova Scotians from paying the toll, and it's only non-residents that pay the toll. I thought that was a pretty good way of doing it. So, but anyway, this does not make sense to me. We can talk about this until the cows come home, but I really am adamant that the toll should be there. Can you believe that?
Okay, Alan. Thanks, pal. Appreciate it. I get what you're saying, but I think, like you said, we'll agree to disagree on this one. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. Sean, go ahead.
Oh, wow. Good. Oh, 1 second. Here we go. Hello?
Yeah,
Hello?
go ahead.
Todd, I keep hearing, and you just said it, that fentanyl isn't a problem.
I didn't say fentanyl isn't a problem. I didn't say it's not a problem. Listen, Sean, listen to what I said. I didn't say it's not a problem. I never said that.
Okay. Well, Todd, let me ask you, Trudeau blatantly lied to Canadians' faces and said this isn't about fentanyl. I'm going to talk about...
He didn't lie. That's his opinion, Sean. That's his opinion.
Okay. Well, let's talk about fentanyl. This is a story, and this timeline goes from December 9th of 2024 to January 18th of 2025. RCMP in that time seized 46.17 kilograms of fentanyl, 15,765 pills of fentanyl, 44.7 kilograms of methamphetamine, 973 pills of methamphetamine, 29.6 kilograms of cocaine. In that small timeline, Todd. Then we go back to October 25th of 2024, what RCMP are calling the most sophisticated drug lab in Canadian history they busted, seizing to the tune of 53 kilograms of fentanyl, 54 kilograms of fentanyl, 390 grams of methamphetamine.
Okay, your point is what?
My point is This country has a massive fentanyl problem, and we're not using that much fentanyl at this place. They're saying that was almost 100 million doses of lethal fentanyl in that one bust. We have 40 million citizens. Where's the fentanyl going that's being made? They also found over 400 kilograms of the main ingredient used to produce fentanyl. Now, there's countries in this world that have banned this product, meaning it cannot cross the border. It gets seized on entry. Canada is not one of those countries. We are bringing in massive amounts.
So it's legal to bring in fentanyl illegally in the country. Illegal drugs they're allowed. Is that what you're saying?
It's legal to bring in the chemical because it is not on the substance banned list in Canada. Okay. So therefore, border agents cannot seize that drug. It's not a drug. It's not a drug until they make fentanyl out of it.
Okay.
So banning that thing, Todd, that is 900 over in just from October to January 18th. That's almost 2,000 pounds of fentanyl being made in this country. And I'm going to send you the two stories from the RCMP.
Okay, do that. I'm out of time. Thank you. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your call. No, actually, we'll continue with your calls from 12:30 to 1. When we come back, the Fed's implementing new regulations for Nova Scotia's Elver fishery. That when we come back. Okay, a reminder, we will take your calls between 12:30 and 1 to extend the open hour. We only had a half an hour of an open hour this morning because we had the Premier on for a full hour, so we'll take your calls between 12:30 and 1, so look forward to hearing from many of you. Lots to talk about that for sure. Joining us now is the Auditor General of Nova Scotia, Kim Adair. Kim, thanks for joining the show.
Hi. Yes, pleased to be chatting with you.
Excellent. So you flagged something in your latest report, Nova Scotia failing to hold universities to account for spending, and some big numbers here. So give everybody some of the details, please.
Okay. So we were looking at the funding that flows to the universities, and it's given out by the Department of Advanced Education. It's been, the amount involved is $2.5 billion has been given out over the last 5 years. And so the role of the department is to make sure that they're effectively funding the universities, monitoring that spending, and also holding the universities accountable for the public funds. So that was the purpose of our work. Just to explain a bit about the overall findings.
Sure.
The biggest portion of that, roughly $1.9 billion, is what they call unrestricted operating grants. So it's funding that the universities can pretty much choose to spend as they see fit. And when we asked about how the department decides how they come up with the amounts they give each year, so it's just under $500 million each year, what their support was for it, we found that it's essentially an arbitrary amount that they come up with and arbitrarily allocate amongst the 10 universities. It was based on a formula that made sense 25 years ago. So we've made recommendations that needs a revisit. Mm-hmm. The other component is there had been, in the last 5 years, just under $277 million that has been, I'd call it targeted spending for healthcare initiatives, like, for example, increase the number of nursing seats so you have more nursing graduates, or medical seats for physicians, or infrastructure to build a medical school in Cape Breton, for example. When we looked at that funding, we found that making sure that funding achieves the objectives, it's not, there's not enough rigor in place or performance indicators to make sure that it achieves the intended objectives. So that was the healthcare funding. And then the third part was around the financial health and sustainability of the 10 universities. We did an analysis of the audited financial statements over the last 5 years, and there's a lot of good reporting information in there if anyone's interested in knowing sort of how the universities are doing. Some have pretty healthy surpluses, whereas others have repeated deficits. We looked at the debt to student ratio, and there are a few of them that are very high and getting in a risky situation. We compared it to a university in Ontario, Laurentian University, that actually went into creditor protection a few years back. And there are a few here in Nova Scotia that are in that same range. So it's important that the department monitor the financial health and stability of the universities, and that's just a snippet of some of the information that's in the report.
All right. Are you offering recommendations here?
Yes, we had 11 recommendations around all these three areas that I've just sort of highlighted.
Yeah.
The department has accepted them all. They also indicate that 3 are already complete, and work is underway to implement the remainder of them.
All right, let's hear some of the recommendations.
Okay, let me see. So in terms of financial health and sustainability, we're recommending that the department needs to define that, working in consultation with the universities to decide, so what are the indicators that we all should be monitoring to make sure they are financially sound and sustainable going into the future. We have recommended that when it's funding earmarked for specific health indicators, that they, first of all, make sure the amount that you transfer is what is needed. In the report, we show how there's been millions and millions of dollars that was advanced to the universities long before they needed it, and it's still sitting in their bank accounts. So there's the question of, when are they going to spend that? Who gets the benefit of the interest revenue? Because you can imagine if it's sitting in your bank account for a year or 2 or 3, you're generating a pretty good interest revenue. And so does that go to the university, or does that come back to the province? If they don't need it, do the funds come back to the university or to the province, or does the university get to use it for some other purposes? So in the agreements around this funding, they really need to firm up the details. So that's a bit. But so the 3 areas that I talked about, there's recommendations on all 3 of them.
Yeah, for sure. And look, it's universities and students continue to say that they need more funding, but it's like anything. You can spend more money. It's like healthcare or anything else. You can throw more money at it, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a better product or a better result on the other end. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I recognize that it's a delicate balance, because the universities are independent academic institutions with their own governance structure, and they operate independent of government. But on the other hand, they do receive, on average, a third of their revenue stream from the province, so from the public purse. And that's why the province needs to do their due diligence to make sure that annual investment of roughly $500 million each and every year is protected and meeting the educational needs. And also there's a lot of labor force shortages that the province is experiencing, and it's a matter of the parties working together to make sure that the labor force shortages can be addressed as much as possible by the universities, but at the same time, allow them to make their own decisions on the degree programs that they're offering. So it's not for me to weigh in on just exactly what that looks like, but I think this report sort of brings a lot of that discussion to the forefront.
Okay, like always, the report's available to people, for anybody who wants to look at it. It's available on your website?
Yes, it is.
Okay, Kim.
Yeah.
Listen, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much, as always.
Okay, thank
All right,
you.
take care.
Bye.
Kim Adair, Nova Scotia's Auditor General. When we come back, we'll continue with a half an hour of your calls, an open half hour when we come back. All right, we're going to take your calls till 1 o'clock. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. If you've got something you'd like to talk about, give us a buzz, 902-405-6000. Well, you just heard it on our newscast. U.S. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick says he expects Donald Trump will pause tariffs on Canada and Mexico until April 2nd. He told CNBC he expects an agreement today on goods he says are compliant with the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement on trade. So this is the bizarre nature of all of this, folks. This on again, off again thing, and it's just it's part of the routine. Look, if tariffs make sense for all the reasons why Trump insists that they do, then why pause it a month? Does that make any sense? Like if his heels were dug in and this was a done deal and it's necessary, and to hell with the consequences, and to hell with Canada and Mexico and anybody else for that matter, why the reprieve? I think it speaks to the insanity of the whole situation and how there is no rhyme or reason. This is why when people say it's about fentanyl, it's not about fentanyl. I'm not saying that fentanyl is not an issue, but that's not what's going on here. What's the end game? Perhaps there is no end game. Perhaps it's just about control. I don't know. But look, if it were about one specific thing and it made sense, then why the reprieve? It doesn't make any sense to me. 902-405-6000. Aaron, hello.
Hi, Todd. How are you?
I'm well. You?
Good. Just wanted to shine some light on the fentanyl and Sean's little rant there. Just want to highlight a recent study on fentanyl samples that were confiscated in the United States. All of those samples, everyone, this is millions of samples, were found to have an extremely dangerous industrial chemical added to them. That was because that's the way that Mexicans cook fentanyl. Now, I'm going to let you guess how many samples that were taken in Canada had the same industrial chemical in them. 0.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This shows that our supply does not mix with the supply in the States. Why would the States buy our fentanyl when they can get it cheap, readily available from Mexico? Now, Sean also mentioned there was 100 million doses or something to that super lab that was there. They actually had a very clever chemist who was working there who was able to produce precursor chemicals himself, which impressed the heck out of the RCMP. And they had so much of it is because they sell it to other people that make fentanyl. So basically, most of Canada's fentanyl supply is used for domestic use. Some of it is shipped to Australia, New Zealand, parts of Asia, parts of Europe. But generally, our fentanyl supply does not go down into the States, and that can be proven through the samples. Now, another thing, this kind of leads into it. Another thing I wanted to talk about was a lot of people are scratching their heads as to why people tend to follow maniacs and they can't be reasoned with. And I would direct people to a YouTube channel called Mind of Being. And recently they had a video they did on a guy named Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who is an old theologian who went through the Holocaust. And he wrote a thing called the theory of stupidity. That's what the video is called. And it's not about people being stupid that, they're not good at doing math. This can affect anybody. Not really bad, but if people want to understand why people follow folks like Donald Trump or get into some really crazy groupthink that they just can't be reasoned with, I would direct them to that 20-minute video. It will shine a lot of light on why people do this and why they cannot be reasoned with. And that's all I had to say.
Okay, Todd. Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. And the other thing is that doesn't make any sense to me is Is it not the U.S. border guards and the border agency, U.S., that controls what goes into the United States? Like, I don't understand this. This is stupid. It really is dumb. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. How are Canadian border agents in charge of what goes into the United States? That doesn't even make any sense. To me, it doesn't. 902-405-6000. David, hello.
Hi, Todd. Yeah, I guess just before I get to my topic, like, oh, great, a 1 month reprieve, I think the problem with, like, the danger for Trump is that people are just going to start losing patience and willingness to compromise and just sort of an attitude of, like, look, if we're going to do this, let's just do it and get it over with. So, I mean, we're feeling it at home, but I think you see some of that in Europe, especially towards Ukraine and stuff like that. So, I mean, yeah, the long-term consequences in terms of lost credibility for the States could be significant. But, yeah, just anyway, I really enjoyed the segment with the Premier. It was sort of a good discussion, good questions and stuff like that, and I felt he sort of, generally showed interest and sort of responded to what people had to say. So it was good. Yeah, I guess just on that topic, if we are to produce more natural gas in our province, I think it's important that we sort of use that gas for our own domestic consumption and, help ourselves get off coal and sort of wood heat and all that stuff. But equally important would be to use it in as efficient manner as possible and squeeze every drop of energy out of that. And we've talked about this a lot before, but sort of combined heat and power systems where you capture the waste heat from the electrical generating process can reduce by over half the amount of fuel you have to use to produce a given amount of electricity. And that's just because you're displacing the fuel that you would have had to use to provide heat, but you're able to use from the waste heat from the electricity process. But something else for people to look up, there's a company called Roper, and there's actually a number of them, but they're sort of one of the first and been doing it actually, for over 100 years. But they produce heat-driven heat pumps, which, as opposed to sort of your natural gas furnace, uses the combustion of natural gas to drive a heat pump, which then further reduces your fuel consumption by 30% or so. But the advantage of those is also that they don't use refrigerants, which are sort of either damaging to the ozone layer or have a huge impact on global warming. They use sort of salt and ammonia, so they actually have a zero global warming potential if they do happen to leak into the environment, as opposed to the other sorts of refrigerants, which are actually like a significant amount of greenhouse gases. I think something like a grocery store, something like Superstore, one of their refrigerant systems might use something like, thousands of kilograms of refrigerant per year with a leak rate of, whatever percent. That means quite a lot goes into the environment. So there's sort of, other sort of things to think about in terms of the energy debate as well. Also sort of, heat pumps and the refrigerants and, the effect in the environment and stuff too. So yeah, natural gas, it's a good option in that way. And I'm not sure about producing in our province. That's for, people more knowledgeable than me to decide on that. But if we are to do it, then yeah, let's use it efficiently and, let's use it in our own province.
Okay, David, appreciate the call, pal. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, 902-405-6000. Tyler, hello.
Hey, Todd, how are you today?
I'm well, you?
I'm doing well. I just want to commend you on your professionalism there right before 12 o'clock. You sounded like the disclaimer part of an American medical commercial trying to get through to the to the break in time there.
Yeah, I know.
It was excellent.
Thank you.
I have a quick comment, a very quick gripe, and then a question for you.
Okay.
It seems that this is all part of art of the deal, doesn't it?
It does.
It
sure
it's
does.
Just leverage and pressure and, love him, hate him, whatever else in between. I don't know that he's accomplishing what he's trying to do,
What is he trying to do, Tyler? That's one of the questions. What the hell is he trying to do here?
Well, it's funny because there's some things that he's done that I think are great, like taking tax off of tips and overtime work and stuff like that. So it's like, where's the middle lane here? Like what, maybe there's something that we don't know that he does know, about all this stuff. But, it certainly seems like it's on this particular issue, it's going down an avenue that, it might need some mental health supports. So, but my quick gripe, and I'm wondering if you're going to agree with me on this, is people who are backing into a parking spot and they don't look in their mirrors, they're just using their little nav thing now.
Huge.
I don't know. Personally, it drives me nuts.
Yeah.
I see it all the time. It's like, people, start using your mirrors, please.
Absolutely. They're a tool. They're not meant to be used.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just an aid.
Use it as another mirror, right? That's it. So my question to you, Todd, today is, obviously there's a lot of political talk and stuff going on right now, and I only caught the tail end of the interview with the Premier. But my question is, where has all of the talk gone and the conversation and the efforts into the homeless situation in Halifax? It seems that, this problem certainly hasn't gone away. And, we were talking about how do we implement, different avenues and problem-solving things, to work on this. And it seems like the majority of the effort has gone to, I don't want to say concerted effort to not talk about it, but perhaps sweep the problem a bit under the rug. For such a long time, it was at the forefront of everybody's minds, and the problem hasn't been solved. It hasn't been changed. If if you're involved in community outreach at all, that this problem is continuing to get worse. It's not getting better. And I'm just wondering where the talk is about that.
Yeah, that's a great point. But that's the thing with the news cycle, is that when something dominates the news cycle like tariffs, everything else, remember the pandemic? Of course you do. Yeah. All we talked about for 2 years was COVID, and nothing else. And this is the challenge, and because we do lose sight of it, you're absolutely correct, 100%. And it's a shame, but I don't know what else I can add to it other than I agree with you. It's not only not going away, I would suggest that it gets worse every day, probably.
Absolutely, it doesn't. I mean, the affordability crisis, and this tariff stuff is kind of tied into that. I mean, let's focus on the problems here at home. I mean, obviously the tariffs and the affordability crisis all ties in. It affects everybody, but let's work from the inside out.
Yeah, good comments. Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. Hello, Dave.
Yes, thanks for taking my call, Todd. Now, listen, I think the stock market had a lot to do with it as it went into a tailspin with these tariffs. He looks at that market all the time. He's heard from farmers and other related businesses that you might want to listen to us here right now with the Canada tariffs and Mexican tariffs. So I think that he listened, and I believe that it is part of the art of the deal. He's just feeling things out right now, I believe. I do believe, though, there's a silver lining to this, Todd, and you had Sean on talking about fentanyl. Well, I just went on the Canada Government Health info base on how many people have died from opioid overdoses and what have you, and most of it is fentanyl, because you can die very quickly with fentanyl, and even if you're around it, you can get very sick from it. So it's a very potent, sinister drug. I would recommend to everybody, don't do drugs. I know there's alcoholism and what have you in families. That used to be the old thing, but now don't do drugs if you can help it, because you get hooked on that stuff. And there was 50,000 deaths between 2016 and 24, and the hospitalizations are horrendous, which puts a strain from overdoses and poisoning on our system. They scrape them off the sidewalks and whatever, and we see them there. Now, we don't see that so much in Halifax as yet, because we're not a big city. We're getting there. And we have our problems. You see the homelessness that also will turn to drugs, sadly. I know I would if I was living in a tent, Todd. I'm sorry to say. But, I mean, it's so potent and deadly, and it puts a burden on our everything, the society. It's an epidemic. So regardless of what folks say, and like I said, there's always a silver lining to something. And you know what? It has brought us attention to it. Has it not, Todd?
Yep,
I think you had an open line when I think you had a day of non-Trump, and we were talking about the drug situation. You had callers calling in that have had fentanyl incidents in local people and drug issue. It was so sad. It just busted you up. We need to listen to this. And like I said, just go on YouTube and you can see downtown Vancouver or Toronto or Los Angeles or anywhere where people are on fentanyl. It is the Walking Dead. And and we don't even know how many people have died that we don't even know, right? They're identified. They just lost souls. And we need to do something because it is epidemic and it is ruining our society. It will ruin our society. I think there's been more deaths from fentanyl in 2 years than there has with COVID. Like, I don't know where I heard that stuff, but it's very believable. So we have problems with this drug in North America and the world possibly. So I don't mind. It has brought us some attention towards a disease. And we better get a hold of this thing and try to treat it. and it's costly to the system in more ways than one. Right, Todd? So, Sean's right, and I know you have callers and whatever, but it's here. It's amongst us, and we need to better get a grip on it. And again, I think Trump has done some good things. Look at some of the businesses that are opening up. He's brought into, from Taiwan, from Japan. Now they're not being tariffed, right? And they're going to set up before he starts thinking about it. And he's bringing these, and I think it was a chip manufacturing company from Taiwan. And, he's bringing in business, and Canadians may go down there themselves.
Well, some will, for sure.
Yeah, because we're taxed to crap here.
Yeah, that's true.
Small business to try to start here with all the rhetoric and the BS that goes on with trying to set up shop here.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you go down there?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Dave, it's one thing to be patriotic, but you got to make money if you're in business. You know that as well as anybody. Right?
We've lost a lot of talent. Actors go down south, right? They've made a fortune down there. Mike Myers, he comes, truly Canadian. Well, he made his money in U.S. dollars. He has a penthouse in New York. So don't be hypocritical. We have nurses. We have medical. A lot of doctors went down south, and they still are, because you're not getting the tax burden. And he's inviting that. Yeah. So we need to counter that with a better way to do business here and start backing off on the taxes. That's just my humble opinion.
I agree, Dave. We are taxed to death. I'll give you a quick example. Is my fiance Kelly works in the financial industry, and she moved from New Brunswick to here, and her pay were relatively the same. It was I think the taxes were at least a third more in personal income taxes here in Nova Scotia than they were in New Brunswick. That's just one example.
Wow. Well, right. Why wouldn't you go to New Brunswick? Why wouldn't you go to Alberta, where it's a little cheaper to buy in real estate? Why wouldn't you go to the U.S. if he makes it easier for us to go down there and bring our talents down there?
Well, some will.
Of course I would.
Some will, right? That's the bottom line.
And that's the free border. I like that. I don't mind that. So we got to wake up here, our government here, and say, hey, let's open things up and make it a little easier for business to come in here and want to be here. We have a beautiful country, and we have a lot to offer. But I see where Trump's going with this, right? He's going to recruit talent and what have you, clean it up a bit. Look, we need a facelift, right? The U.S. needs a facelift, and they're getting it rapidly. And I think, you know what? The taxes here, Todd, like I said, we're basically kind of a socialist society. So, that's where we are right now. So hopefully a change. It's a wake-up call, right?
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Dave. Appreciate the comments. Cheers. Take care. Al, hello.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm well, you?
Good, thanks.
Great.
Just want to talk about the bridges. Mayor Fillmore had a comment last week that the removal of tolls is going to increase traffic on the bridges, and it will increase wear and tear. So the replacement or repair of the McKay Bridge is going to happen a lot sooner than if the tolls were kept in place. So Mr. Houston removed the tolls to make traffic better. I don't know how the toll removal makes traffic better.
Well, again, it's unknown. We won't know till it happens, right? There are theories, and some suggest that I've heard people say that it's going to create traffic congestion. Others say that it won't, and we'll know when it happens, right? I don't know. And as far as how much traffic is on the bridge, we don't know whether that's going to increase exponentially or by a third or whatever. So we don't know any of this stuff yet.
Right. In my mind, I would rather have them put the money towards the transit and keep the tolls on the bridge.
Yeah. Yeah, Al, look, I'm perhaps because I use the bridges quite a bit. I don't have to go over to the other side of the bridge. But when I do, selfishly, and I have a Mac Pass, I'm going to be glad that I don't have to pay that. But does it make...
I agree. I'm in the same boat. I use them, not all the time, but a fair amount. Yeah. But I'd rather pay my $1 a crossing and have the money from the tolls, or have the money go towards transit, which would get more cars off the road.
Yeah, that's true.
And because I live in Cole Harbour, I see buses go by with 1 and 2 people on it.
Yeah.
If you make it more affordable, not taking the bus because it's affordable. It's not efficient in my mind. That's why I don't take the bus. But if you have more ridership, maybe they can open more routes, and the bus is running regardless. So if you have 2 people on it or 50 people on it, the cost of running the buses isn't that much higher. And in my mind, it takes the traffic off the roads. You go to the McKay Bridge from the Cirque, you're going from 2 lanes to 6 or 8 lanes and then back down to 2 lanes. That's where the traffic jam is. And unless you have a 6 or 8 lane bridge, that's not going to solve that.
Yep.
In my mind, I get what you're saying. Like, we subsidize education, or we pay for education and things like that. And that's the society we live in, and that's not a bad thing. But I think the money could be spent better elsewhere.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Fair. Thanks, Al. Appreciate the call.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. And by the way, we had this in our newscast, but the tolls were scheduled to come off on the 1st of April. If you're just tuning in, that has been changed. Let's see, 2 weeks earlier. That's right. 2 weeks earlier. The provincial government now says tolls will be removed from the Harbour Bridge earlier than previously announced. The Public Works Department now says the tolls will stop being collected on the McDonald and McKay bridges as of Monday, March 17th. Again, 2 weeks earlier than the original date of April 1st. So there you go, folks. And by the way, of course, if you have a Mac Pass, we had Stephen Proctor on the show talking about this. Make sure that your banking or your credit card information is updated. Go to the website so that you can get your refund if you have an overage, which many of you will. I will. I know because mine was just taken. So I think I get $30 in the account right now. So that I'm going to have an overage. So I'll have to make sure that I go and update my banking information on their website so I can get my money back. Thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it very much. Thanks to Vanessa Vandeness as well on the other side of the glass at the control board. Doing a fine job, as always. We're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.